Hey folks, let's learn something new about the oil and gas industry. Alright, we have our monthly guest from Russia. Hey Rhod.
Hi Mark, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. Rhod MacKenzie is with Ruskin Info, and Rhod is actually, as you can tell from his accent, really not Russian, but he's been there for a long time, and he knows the oil and gas industry, especially in that part of the world. So today we're just going to talk about what's going on. So Rhod, it sounds like you had some fun recently at a conference.
That's correct. I flew up to Moscow. As you know, I'm based in Ufa, down in the Urals, which is a main oil-producing district. And it was the CIS Petrochemicals Conference, which is looking at the latest technologies, developments in petrochemicals in Russia and the CIS, but also the development of the technologies and their application, global applications within Russia. And I ran into a couple of interesting guys there who came from not too far down the street from you, Mark. I've sent them both the first ever video we did together, and both have come back with very positive comments, and I'm actually going to send it around their organisation. So when we actually publish this one online, I'm going to say hi to Mitch Hindman, who's the Global License Manager for Synthetic Fuels Technology, Catalyst and Licensing. So hi Mitch, I enjoyed meeting you, I enjoyed the drinks and the chats that we had over the 3 days in Moscow. And also Jacob Perlowitz, he's with Air Liquide and he's their Global E&C Solutions Manager. And again, we had some great fun and great conversations, and they both enjoyed the show. So hopefully I'm bringing you some new fans, even if you aren't local.
What a small world, right? So you're halfway across the planet, and you run into a couple of guys from the Houston area. That's the world we live in. But I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the oil industry has always been global. Most of the easy-to-find oil has been taken, so you have to move further and further afield, particularly here in Russia. We've got, well, the largest country in the world, and about 50% of the resources haven't even been touched yet, simply because they're too hard to recover, or the technologies need to be developed, etc. And there are solutions that you guys in the States developed in Alaska that are particularly applicable in the Russian Far East, etc. So it is very much global, and companies like ExxonMobil, etc., and Chevron, they're all coming, and they've all been here a long time, and they're still looking to develop.
Yeah, it's a lot of people don't understand that. It's a global commodity, right? So that Brent price is the same here as it is in Tokyo, as it is in Buenos Aires, right? It's a global commodity, so it's a global industry. It just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and it's just finding it and getting it out the ground that's becoming a bit more difficult. I mean, when we touch every time on the oil price, and between us, I think we've got a reasonable consensus that we're optimists about the oil price. And I think the last time we spoke, the pessimists were talking it dropping below 30, and here we are 5 weeks later, where it's actually at 45 for Brent crude, and I think West Texas Intermediate is about 43.
Yeah.
So, and the consensus here from the Ministry of Oil and the Ministry of the Economy is it's pretty much like we predicted in the last one, that it's looking at 55 to 60 by the end of the year.
Yeah, and I stick to that. Now, a lot of people in the news talk about the recent OPEC failure to agree on production freezes. What people don't understand is they were not going to agree on cuts. They were just going to agree on caps, and it fell apart. I actually think that's going to play almost no... that's not going to have much of an impact on global oil prices.
I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, OPEC only had a level of power and the levers back in the 70s and 80s. Now it doesn't have. The reason it had a level of power is most of the members of OPEC, the oil companies, are government owned. So again, they can make policy decisions. But now with most of the major oil companies around the world, they're not government owned, with the exception of the Saudi Aramco and
Right.
perhaps in Nigeria. So they're never really going to have that effect. The market always wins. I think whether you're in the oil business or any other business, you can't buck the market.
Right. Yeah, and the thing with OPEC that we think is we're seeing the beginning of the destabilization of OPEC. So you're having members not wanting to work together, and that was their whole power, is their ability to work together. And once that starts, that genie's out of the bag, and it's not going to be put back in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And countries like Russia and the US, they're the largest producers in the world. I mean, you can take Saudi Arabia, but again, that's in second place. The US is third, Russia being first. When you've got the top two producing around 10 million barrels a day, there's no way that you can buck the system.
Yeah. Yeah, which actually I think is good. I think it's good for the world's population, right? Let the free market control this commodity, and I think it's better for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that partially the oil price was manipulated. You get that with use of the stock markets, etc., and that can only last for a certain while. You know, the physical commodities, actual oil, physical oil, rather than the paper oil, will always dictate the price.
Yeah.
Supply and demand.
Yeah, no, we agree 100%. So what else is going on in Russia as far as oil and gas?
Oh, it's been quite interesting in oil and gas. Is the government, because of some budget shortfalls, obviously caused by the lack of tax revenue from oil, has been looking at privatising some of its assets. And two oil companies are in the firing line, one being the country's biggest, which is Rosneft, which is 68% owned by the government, and they're looking to sell an 18% stake. And the Chinese have come up with a plan. Because Rosneft are a huge exporter of oil to the Chinese market and also to the Indian market, and it may be that they might take that strategic stake as opposed to selling it off in the market to lots of small investors. We'll see, because the Chinese, as usual, are always playing a very cagey game.
Yeah.
The other one being Bashneft, which is my local oil company, which is the sixth largest, and it's a fully integrated oil company. And they're looking to sell either a 25%, 50%, or stake. So, you know, there's a bit of M&A action going on for the first time in some time in the oil industry.
Yeah, it would make sense for China to invest some money in some Russian oil and gas companies because it supplies so much of their need. In the same way with India. And India, if you look at the numbers, India is eventually going to pass up China both in consumption of crude oil and gas and in also population. And I find that so hard to believe because my entire life, everybody talked about how big the population was in China. To think about India and passing them up, I mean, it's a different world now.
Yeah, I'm very close to the Indian market currently because I'm doing a lot of work with an organisation called Polymer Update, which is one of the reasons I was at the CIS Petrochemicals. We provide them with a large amount of information on polymers, plastics, and oil and gas-based products, which are, I mean, pretty much everything these days is made from oil.
Right.
Or gas.
It's a perfect time, Rod, to talk a little bit about what you do and what Ruskin Info does. So, real high level, what do y'all do?
Well, basically, we have a very sophisticated search and delivery engine that trawls over 1,800 different news sites in the Russian language, brings it back to our desktops, and we select news based on particular parameters and translate it from Russian into English. Our clients have specific needs. I mentioned the needs of the petrochemical industry. But if you're a drilling company or a company who makes drill bits, and you want to know who's drilling, for example, we can tell you who's drilling. For example, news story today, in the first quarter of this year, operational drilling was up 6% and exploratory drilling was up 9% in Russia. So if you're a drilling bit manufacturer and you want to know where are things happening, we can provide you with that specific information.
Yeah, and it's not just drilling. It's any type of service that would have an interest in figuring out where the business is in Russia. You have that data.
We have that. We do everything from finding it to refining it. So if you do software for exploration, you know, you're looking for etc., we can help you identify who's looking at identifying oil sites.
Yeah, that's awesome. So any companies out there in the world that's looking to do business in Russia, reach out to Rod. Him and his team can help you make sure that you don't waste time or money somewhere else. So Rod, we're coming up on our time. How do we want to end this show?
Well, we always end up talking about alcohol. So tonight, as you know, Scotland, where I'm actually from, has a large number of islands around it. And a number of them produce whiskey. And it's whiskies of a very kind of different sort of flavour and characteristics. So I'll start off with the Orkney Islands, which are some islands off the top of Scotland, just below Shetland, which most of your oil people will know is one of the major centres of the North Sea oil industry. So the Orkneys actually has a big terminal where they bring it on shore and before it's pumped on or put onto tankers. And they have a major distillery there called Highland Park. Now, this is a very distinctive whisky. This is the 18-year-old. They do quite a number of, they do an 18-year-old, 15-year-old, 12-year-olds, and a variety of different ones. This has a very seaweedy and peaty flavour to it. It's very, very distinctive, and if you're looking for something original, then that's well worth giving a try. Another island which is pretty famous from over the sea to Skye, Bonnie Prince Charlie, those people who remember their Scottish history and the 45 rebellions, etc. The only distillery on the island of Skye, which is a little bit like a mini continent because it has mountains and valleys and coastline, this is called Lagavulin. And the nice thing about this one is it's very, very distinctive because it's the only one on that island, and you can just taste the difference. The largest of the whisky islands is an island called Islay, which just sounds like Islay, and it has probably the most distilleries of any island I've ever come across anywhere in the world. For such a small island, I think the last count there was 15. They all have a very distinctive flavour. This is Lafroig, which is a 10-year-old. Again, it's unusual because they use different flavoured barrels. They buy their barrels from either bourbon companies in the United States or sherry companies in Spain, which gives a very, very unique flavour. This is Bowmore, and this is the legend version, and as you can read from the label, they actually use bourbon casks.
Yeah, how cool is that they actually go out in the world and source the right used cask to make sure they impart the flavor that they want in their whiskey. That is really cool. Yeah.
So that's the last one I'd like to show you. Yeah, I think that is the last one. Sorry, I didn't think I did do Lagavulin. Maybe not. That's another one. This is a 16-year-old Lagavulin, which I think is very distinctive. Okay, Mark, I think that's a bit of a wrap.
Yep. So, Rod, I know where I'm going next time I want to taste a bunch of whiskeys. I'm showing up in Russia at your doorstep. You have quite a collection.
You're more than welcome anytime, Mark.
Yeah, Rod, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Hey, folks, I hope this helped. We will see you next time.